Welcome back aliens, my name is Devin Reddy, and in this video we will see how to create a web application using Spring Boot. In fact, we have seen what is Spring Boot, we have seen how to achieve dependency injection, auto wiring in Spring Boot, but in real world what we do is we build a web application. Now it may be some website where you will show views, maybe implementing AngularJS or using JSP, or maybe you just want to create a REST service. Again, we'll go towards REST service later, but in this video we will see how to create a web application where you'll be making a view in JSP. That is tricky. Okay, so what I will do is I will create a web application, but how do we do that? Now, if you remember the steps for creating a Spring Boot, it's very easy. Just open STS, right click here and say new, and click on Spring Starter Project. And here, of course, the project will be coming from start.spring.io. And I want to give a proper name. So I would say my web app. Okay, you can give it, it doesn't matter. And the group ID would be com.telusko. And here also I will mention it as Telusko. Okay, now once we have done with that, click on next. Now this is important step because we are not building a normal application. This is a Spring Boot web application. So of course we need to add the web feature there. Now, when I say web feature, you must have seen Spring MVC. In fact, if you have not seen my Spring MVC video, that is the important video you have to watch first. So if you have not seen that, in the description area, you will find a link for the theory video. Now here we have to add a web, right? So I will simply search for web, and you can see we got this option of web. Now, since we are using Spring version 2.0, we have one more option, which is reactive web, which is introduced in 2.0. We'll not go for that now. Let's select this web and click on next. And then at the end, you will click on finish. You will get your project. But is it working? That's a question. And you can see this project is coming from the official website, so it will take some time. So we got our project here, which is my web app. Now, if I see this project, you can see we just have one package which has a file. Now, if I open this file, you can see something here, but let's ignore this part as of now because we just want to focus on creating a web application. So we'll close this. And if I open my SRC, we have a main. Now, basically, when you say you want to create a web page, so first of all, I want to create a page which is index.jsp. So inside this main, now this is important. You can create a web page. You can create any JSP page provided it belongs to a web app folder. So inside this, we need to create a folder called as web app. So I would say a folder called as web app. And inside this web app, you can create any number of pages you want. So I would say new, and I want to create a JSP page. So I would search for JSP, and you can say next. And I will name this page as home.jsp and click on finish. Now what I want is whenever I request for home, so the URL I want to go for here is, I will write it here. So the URL I want to go for is, of course, localhost :8080, that's a port number which it takes, / whenever I search for home, or why home, we can have any URL there. But just to make it easy, whenever I search for home, it should call home.jsp. Now if you have worked on MVC, you know what I'm talking about. So in MVC, we create a model, we create a view. So this is our view. And this is our request. So the request goes to controller, and the controller will call this home.jsp. Oh, unfortunately, we don't have a controller yet. Now, how do we create a controller in Spring? It's very easy. In Servlet, if you have worked on Servlet, to make a controller, you have to get a Servlet that will do a lot of things. But here, we just need to say a new class, and then we can give any name. I can say this is my home controller. Again, there's no compulsion that it should have a home controller name. You can have any name, doesn't matter. And then click on finish. Now, once you got a class, it's very easy. You just need to add a method. Normally, if you remember servlets, you can just link these things with servlets. In Servlet, what we do is we create a service method. And don't worry, even if you don't know Servlet, that's fine because Spring MVC is much easier than servlets. So we need to create a method, right? Because we want to perform an action. So I would say I want to create a method which is public, or maybe I will say void, and I would say maybe home. Again, doesn't matter what your method name is, but just to keep it simple, I'm using the same method name as the request. And I would print something here, nothing fancy. I just want to print something because the first step would be, see, technically, if I want to make you understand this, if I open my web browser, so when I search for localhost 8080/home, I want to get that page. As you can see, it is not responding anything now. It's because we don't have that link. Ultimately, what I want is someone should accept this request. So step one would be, I want a controller who will accept that request. So of course, to do that, first of all, you need to give a special preference to this page or to this class. We need to add a annotation. And trust me, when you work on Spring applications, you have to remember a lot of annotations. So the annotation which you have to use here is add controller. That's it. You just need to use an annotation called as controller, and you have to import the package. Now, of course, when you're going for REST API or REST services, you need to go for REST controller. But as of now, let's keep it simple. Let's make it controller. Now, whenever I get a request, your Spring Boot application will make sure that this controller will handle all the requests. And who is doing that? Thanks to auto configuration. If you remember, in Spring Boot, we have this feature. Behind the scene, it is doing configuration for you. So we have a dispatch servlet behind the scene, and that dispatch servlet is responsible to send request here. But how will you map it? Because there might be different requests, right? Currently, we are sending request for home. Maybe I want to send request for products. I want to send a request for contact us. I want different pages for different requests. So we need to specify something called as request mapping. So using this request mapping, you can mention for which request I want to handle this. So when I will say, whenever we get a home request, I want to import the package first. So whenever you get a request for home, I want to execute this method. But how would I know if the method is getting executed? So I would say system.out.println. I know I'm printing on the console. I should be printing on page, but let's do that later. So I will simply print hi, because if it is printing hi, that means there is someone who is accepting the request. Okay, that sounds fun. Now what I will do is I will run this application. But how? Now, if you remember, when you work with Servlet or normal Spring MVC, we need a server, right? And you can see I have not added any server. You can see it says no servers are available. Oh, that's a problem now. But what if I say you don't need external servers to run Spring Boot application? Oh, that's a magic, right? Because if you expand this Maven dependencies, you can see we have a Tomcat here. Where is that? Yeah, you can see that we have embedded Tomcat inside your project itself. And that's a magic, because you don't need external server to run this. Now you will say, what's the advantage of this? Now look at this advantage. Let's say if you are working on a project, and if you want to test this project in some other laptop, and you got your friend's laptop now, and luckily your friend's laptop has a Eclipse or a STS. But then if you are using a normal application, you need to install Tomcat externally. But here, you just need to import the project, that's it, because project itself has a Tomcat. So it saves lots of your efforts, and plus, it is easier for deployment. Okay, so once we know this, let's run this project, because the moment you run this project, it will start the internal Tomcat. So here we go. I will right click on the project. I would say it's run as Spring Boot app. It will take some time, obviously. So you can see it is running and the Tomcat has started. You can see that it's saying Tomcat started at port number 8080. So I'll go back to my browser and I will say localhost 8080/home. The moment I say enter, oh, we got an error. Okay, that's fine. We got an error. That's fine. Important thing is go back to the console. Okay, I hope I will be getting high there. Okay, can you see that we got high? That means this controller is handling your request. That was the first step. Okay, when you build an application, web application, we go in a series of steps. First, we need to create something which will accept the request. Sending a response, that's second thing, So there's something going wrong with the response. You can see this error is on the server side, not on the client side. Client has sent the perfect request. It's a server problem, but at least there's someone who's handling this. But then how do I call a page? That's the second thing we want to mention. How do I call this home.jsp? It's actually very simple, after printing hi, or maybe you can remove that statement, you simply need to mention, hey controller, you are responsible to call this home.jsp page. Simply say return home.jsp. Now, since we are returning a string, you will say string. That's it. When you say string return home.jsp, it will call that particular JSP. That sounds awesome. Now, how it knows where to search, because you might be having different folders, how it knows that you have to search in web app, and that is what is done inside Spring Boot. So Spring Boot has this auto configuration stuff which is actually searching. So in the configuration itself, they have mentioned that your pages will be there inside main web app. Yes, if you are changing the path, then you have to do some configuration. We will see that later. But as of now, we just need to mention return home.jsp and it will call that particular JSP. That's a beauty, right? In fact, the same thing can be done, we have done in Spring MVC if you have seen those videos. But let's run this. Let's see if it is working. I will right click here. I would say run as run on Spring Boot. Okay, now this is an obvious error. What is going wrong here? The problem is when you work with the external servers, when you work with Servlet or normal Spring MVC, whenever you restart the application, it will restart your Tomcat server. But unfortunately, the Tomcat server which we have here in this project is embedded Tomcat. So every time you run this project, it will try to run another Tomcat server. It will not restart the old one. And that's the problem here. So what you have to do is, you should always close the earlier run. So you should terminate it and then you have to run this. Otherwise, you can click on this button which will restart the old application. So I will say relaunch and it should work now. So you can see there is no problem. Tomcat started. I will go back to my browser and I would say enter. Now something weird happened. You can see we got the same error, but we got something in the downloads. You can see we got home.jsp as a download. That's weird, right? Now what is happening here? The thing is, when you say you are calling home.jsp, now JSP is a special type, right? And of course, everyone knows that Spring Boot is something which is very new. And when Spring Boot came into picture, REST APIs or microservices were very famous. So that means when Spring Boot came into picture, the focus was on REST API. Or maybe there are different view technologies, right? Not JSP, we have Velocity, we have ThemeLeaf. So your Spring Boot says, hey, by default, I will not support JSP because my work is to send a response. Example, if I say, there's one more annotation here, which is response body. Again, we'll talk about response body in detail later once we talk about REST API. So if you say response body, let me just show you something what happens if I say response body. So let's run this, and if I go back to the page and if I say enter, you can see it is printing home.jsp. You can print any text you want. Example, in home.jsp, unfortunately it is empty. I will print something here. I would say hi. Okay, why hi? I would say I love Java. So if I say I love Java here, and from the home controller, so it will print home.jsp because this response body says, hey, whatever you are returning is actually the data. It's not the page name, it's data. But I don't want to print a data, right? I don't want response body. What I want is I want to call this page. But unfortunately, your Spring Boot doesn't support JSP. Now, in this case, you need to add a support. Now, of course, you will say, hey, what's the use of a Spring Boot when you have to add the support? But trust me, when you work on real applications, nowadays we don't use JSP. We work on REST APIs. We work with different view technologies. Some projects are based on JSP. That's fine. You can just simply add that feature. Now, to do that, just open your POM XML file, and in this, you just need to add one dependency for that. So I will just come back here, and here I will add that dependency. But which one? So you have to go to Maven repository. I would say MVN repo. So I have to go to MVN repository and here search for Tomcat Jasper. Now Tomcat Jasper, just select this one, the first one, and you need to select a jar which you need. But which one? I'm not sure. So to understand that, I will go to Maven dependency. So whichever version you are using for embedded Tomcat, which is 8.5.31, let's pick up the same one, 8.5.31, and copy this code, go back here and paste. And you can see we got Tomcat Jasper. Now your Spring Boot knows how to convert a JSP into servlet. And of course, right behind the scene, doesn't matter which technology you're working, we have servlets running. So I will go back here and I will relaunch it. I hope it will work this time. Is it saying it is still downloading the source? Is it? Maybe, let's try. It says it is still downloading, but let me try once again. I will say /home, and can you see that we got I love Java and we got the URL because in the page there was this text. But this is working, right? So this is your first application where the flow is happening, right? So you are calling home page, it is returning home.jsp. But what if you want to send some data? What if you want to what if you want to accept some data from the client side, or if you want to perform some operation? That we'll see later. But the main idea is this is how you build a simple web application in Spring Boot. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section if you have any questions, and do click on the like button if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.